Hello, welcome back to The Lovely Vet. I'm Dr. Jenna Shivers, and this is Miss Mindy Moo. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're doing today's episode, part 2 of the 6-part series for camping and cottage safety. Today's episode is animal encounters. So we're going to go through being skunked and how to get rid of that smell. Rolling on dead things as well as animal feces, and then moving on to quills, being quilled by porcupines and how to deal with that. Moving on to Giardia or beaver fever, information on that. And then briefly touching on rabies as well. As always, we've put the timestamps into our video so you can scroll through and view or review whatever section you like. Please like and subscribe. It'll notify you when the new videos are being posted. And if you find this video helpful, our biggest compliment is you sharing it with a friend. So thanks so much. If you would like to follow along with daily tips and tricks, we also have our Instagram page at The Lovely Vet, where we have lots of good info there, and feel free to join us on there as well. So our first topic is getting skunked. So our big thing with skunks, I mean, they're not only in cottaging and camping areas, but also in and around our homes. When our dogs get curious, the skunk's defense is that awful smell that they can spray onto our pets. So one, to avoid being sprayed by skunk, having a good recall. So if you see the skunk before your dog does, you can call them back to you. If you don't get that chance to do that and your dog does get sprayed, number one, if you're transporting them, put over a towel or a blanket to kind of trap that smell in. Number two, once you get them back home, you can use a skunk specific shampoo, like a skunk off shampoo, but I find that a homemade recipe works best. Peroxide is used to oxidize the actual scent particle from the skunk, and it works to break down rather than kind of covering the scent. So we're going to go through that recipe in just a second.
4 cups of 3% hydrogen peroxide, 1/4 cup of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of dish soap.
You want to take that and apply it directly to where your dog has been sprayed as soon as possible after they've been sprayed. And then before you wet the dog down, you want to apply it directly on, obviously avoiding the eyes and the mouth. And then you want that contact time to be just a couple of minutes. Rinse it off really thoroughly. You can repeat if you need to. After the scent is kind of decreased, you can then shampoo them, like rinse them down fully, shampoo them with a regular pet shampoo as well. And then drying them off as best as you can with a towel. Moving on to when your animal rolls in wild animal feces, something dead off the beach, on a trail somewhere. It's nasty, it's disgusting. Again, you want to cover them up with a towel. It's really handy to have a towel in your car or in your pack, your animal pack. So if they do roll everywhere, you can kind of tuck it in around their collar. When you're transporting them, they can kind of decrease the chance of them getting the stuff all over your car. And then moving on, you want to brush any kind of big debris out of the fur first, and then wetting them up down completely. You want to lather them up and keep that contact time on there for 10 minutes before rinsing thoroughly. It's really important with the type of shampoo that you're using that you want it to be a degreasing shampoo. And that's important to get that really strong animal scent out of your dog's coat. You can repeat if you need to, again, or you can try the skunk recipe that we gave you as well. You just want to make sure you're not using that 10-minute contact time with the skunk solution. it can dye the hair of your dog and it can be irritating to the skin. Rinsing off, drying as best as you can. Moving on to porcupines and quills. So porcupines, most people think that they shoot their quills out. However, that's not the case. Porcupines do have over 30,000 quills when they're full-grown adults. What happens is the quills are actually, they fall out quite easily, but the dog actually does have to contact the porcupine in order for them to fall out. So oftentimes they'll be kind of grabbing onto the porcupine and they'll have a lot of quills within their mouth. Other times they just go up to sniff it and they get quills in their face. Other dogs will pounce, get them all over their legs. And then unfortunately, if you find the deceased porcupine, because dogs love that stinky smell so much, they decide they want to roll on the dead porcupine. So they can get the quills all over their shoulder blades, their back, their legs. A really good way to avoid porcupines is because they're nocturnal, they're usually active most around dawn and dusk and overnight. So if you're at a campsite or you're remote, having a leash or a long lead to keep your dog on so they don't wander off, or a kennel, it's not a bad idea. And then the other thing is when you're out hiking during the day, sometimes they can be out and about, working really hard on your call command, your come call command. If you see a porcupine or a skunk or anything before your dog does, you want to be able to call your dog back and give them a positive reward for coming back and hook them on the leash as soon as possible. So you're just avoiding that porcupine, that skunk spray. When your dog does get quilled, it's extremely important to take them into the veterinary clinic as soon as possible. So with porcupine quills, they are barbed just like a fishing hook. So they don't come out easily and they want to continue to migrate further and further in. So just being aware of that. If your dog is out and about on a trail, if you're able to pick them up and carry them to the car to get them to the closest vet clinic, I would certainly suggest doing that. You want to keep them as calm as possible. You want to keep them as confined as possible because the more they move, the more the quills want to move further and further into the muscle. It's not always that easy. If they have a bunch of quills in their face and in their mouth, they're going to be pawing at their face or trying to roll around. If you have a cone of shame and you're able to put that on them, that really helps with them not breaking those quills off before you get to the vet clinic. A lot of people say, you know, oh, he just has a few quills, I'm going to try and pull them myself. I always suggest don't do it. It's worth the time, the money, the effort to get them to the emergency clinic or the vet clinic to have them removed, because realistically, you're going to pull one or two out. The animal is not going to be happy about it. They're going to be very painful. You have the risk of them biting you. You have the risk of breaking the quills off and them getting infection. And that's you're a lot more worse off at that point than before you even started. So, and oftentimes a lot of the quills are located inside the mouth, on the tongue, in the back of the palate. So getting those without doing a full anesthesia or sedation is pretty well impossible. Once all the quills are removed at your vet clinic, your vet will oftentimes recommend putting them on an antibiotic medication. So if there's any quills left under the skin that have been broken off and couldn't be felt or removed at the time, oftentimes those quills will cause an abscess and an infection. So using that antibiotic is going to try and prevent that. Oftentimes veterinarians will tell you to watch for 2 weeks or so after your pet's been quilled. Because those quills, if they are broken off, they will migrate. So you will find, like if you're feeling around their face, around their neck, legs, you'll feel something a little bit sharp, and that's the quill migrating out. Out is better than in, so it's easier to pull those quills out once they're migrating in that direction. Unfortunately, some of those quills can migrate inwards into the chest, to the heart and lungs, into the eyes, into the brain. In those cases, that's kind of our worst case scenario. Quills, even though it seems like it's a pretty minor thing for your pet to go through, it can potentially be lethal if they're going into the wrong spots. So just keep that in mind, get them into the vet clinic and get them treated as quickly as possible. Okay, our next animal disease is Giardia, or beaver fever. So Giardia is a protozoal parasite. So it's a little kind of floating parasite that we see that's transmitted in the water by wildlife. So if dogs are drinking out of water that's been infected, or even sniffing kind of grasses and stuff that have been infected with those Giardia cysts, they can pick that up and then it goes into their intestinal system. Giardia, for the most part, most adult healthy dogs can fight that infection off without too much fuss. It's usually young puppies and immune compromised dogs that we see that they get really pretty severe diarrhea. So if your dog is showing those signs of diarrhea, it's always important to bring in a fresh fecal sample, as fresh as you can get, into your vet clinic. Even if it's quite watery, try your best to bring a little sample in, and they can test that and see if Giardia is the cause of the diarrhea, as well as testing for other parasites as well. If your dog does have Giardia and they have diarrhea with it, your veterinarian can send you home with a treatment program. And it's best to recheck the fecal sample once your treatment is finished, and they'll give you a timeline for that. The other thing to kind of consider and think about is that Giardia is also one of those zoonotic diseases. So that means it can transfer from your dog to you or your children. Washing your hands really, really well after you're finished cleaning up any kind of bowel movements, which most people do anyways, but just an extra caution for you. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about rabies. Most people know about rabies because their pet has been vaccinated against it. The reason that we don't see a lot of rabies in Canada at this point is because that vaccine has been so effective. Our government mandates that all of our pets, whether indoors or outdoors, are vaccinated for rabies. If you're going out camping, you're going out hiking, you're going out cottaging, definitely make sure your dog's rabies vaccine is up to date. If your pet does get bitten by an animal that has rabies, they can get rabies if they are not vaccinated for it. So rabies is fatal. It will affect your pet in a way that they are more likely to bite other animals and other people. It oftentimes triggers in their brain, it changes their personality. It makes them either more aggressive or more docile. And then when you go to comfort them, oftentimes they will bite you to try and transmit the disease. So rabies is also transmissible to humans, which is why it is such an important thing for us to vaccinate against. And like I said, rabies is fatal. It will kill you. So if you've been bitten by a wild animal, if you've been bitten by a dog that has unknown rabies vaccine status, go into the hospital, get your wound treated, get your rabies vaccine series. It's so important to do that. The most common wildlife to carry rabies are, it's only in mammals. So the most common mammals we see it in are foxes, bats, raccoons, and skunks, mostly in Ontario. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to share with anyone you think that this video might be helpful for. If you want to follow along and get some daily tips, we are on Instagram as well at The Lovely Vet. We would love to see you there and subscribe. Thank you so much for visiting and viewing. Feel free to tune into our next video. Thanks so much.